Assalamu alaikum students, this is Farwa Batul, your O-level computer science instructor, and welcome to another video for chapter number 8 programming. In this video we are doing activity 8.6 that is actually related to iterations. We have already done this activity using Python and using Visual Basic as my programming languages. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how we can do this activity 8.6 using Java as my programming language. So let's quickly start reading the activity. It says that in the high level programming language that your school has chosen to use, write and run two short programs, one using a count control loop and the other a condition control loop. So here the task needs to be done using number one count control loop, controlled loop, and the same task must be done using a condition control loop. I have already explained the types of these loops in my previous videos. So if you want to understand the concept about that, please go ahead and see the previous videos. Okay, so condition control loops. We will use both of these loops to do the task. Now, the next thing is what you have to do. Look at the question. They should each repeat 10 times, incrementing the loop counter by 3 and outputting the value for each iteration. Okay. First, I want to tell you that a count control loop that is used in Java is known as a for loop. A for loop basically depends upon the values of counter, and here you know the exact number of iterations. Exact number of iterations. When you exactly know that how many times you have to iterate, then you are using for loop. Next is a condition control loop that depends upon condition. And in Java, we have two options here. For a condition control loop, we have a precondition loop. In a precondition loop, we use while loop. And the other type of condition control loop is a post condition loop, in which in Java, a post condition loop that is used is your do while loop. So what I will be doing, I will use count control loop, that is a for loop, and I will use precondition loop, a while loop, in order to solve this problem. Okay, now the next thing is that is being said. What is the task here? The task is, number one thing is the iterations that you have to do are 10. Iterations are 10. Number two, the loop counter must be incremented by 3 in each iteration. It means that if we start our counter as 1, then for the next iteration, it must be 1 plus 3, that is 4. For the third iteration, it must be 4 plus 3, 7. So I hope that you are getting my point. In every iteration, the previous value of counter will be incremented by 3. So 3 must be added to the counter value for the next value. So this is what is to be done, and finally you must output your counter value. So the third thing is in the task is you must show the user output. And what is output? Output is your counter value. So the user will see that what are the changes that are being done in your iterations. Now, I hope that the task is clear to you. Let me quickly move towards the first thing, that is my count control loop. I'll show you how we can do it in Java using a count controlled loop. Count control loop is basically a for loop. And let's just quickly show you the syntax. Okay. Now, the for loop starts with for, for. Now, open your round bracket. The first thing is you have to initialize your counter with a value. So let me just write down 1. The counter value is set to 1 for the first iteration. Now write down semicolon. Next you have to put your condition. Now for condition, look at this. If you see the task, when we start with the counter value 1 and we have to go till 10 iterations as said in the task that your program must be having 10 iterations. So look at this, that what needs to be your counter value by the end of your 10th iteration. So just see that. It is 1, 1 plus 3, 4 for the second iteration, 4 plus 3, 7. Why I am doing this? Because I want to know that what is the range of my counter value so that I can make my condition. 7 plus 3 is 10. 10 plus 3 is 13. 13 plus 3 is 16. 16 plus 3 is 19. 19 plus 3 is 22. 22 plus 3 is 25. And 25 plus 3 is 28. So 28 will be your counter value in your 10th iteration. So if you see the range of your counter, it starts from 1 and it goes till 28. So I can simply write my condition as counter must be less than equal to 28. Remember that if this condition will be true, only then your loop will run. And if the condition becomes false, then you will go out of your loop. So this condition will only be false when the counter reaches a number that is greater than 28. If counter is 29, 30, 31, 32, so it will become, the condition becomes false and you will go out of your loop. So till the 10th iterations, this condition will remain true. Now next thing is you put your condition. The third thing you have to do is you must tell that your counter must be incremented by 3. So for this, we will write down the formula counter equals counter plus 3. So in every iteration, once you will go through the loop instructions, then you will increment your counter by 3. Now this is what you have to fix in your for loop. Next, you have to use your curly brackets. Why curly brackets? Because this indicates the start and end of your loop. Okay, inside that, the only thing that you have to do inside your for loop is to write down an output statement, that is system.out.println in Java. And then put the name of your variable counter here so that the user is going to see the counter value in each iteration. So let me just quickly tell you that what will be happening once you run this code. So the first thing will be done is in the memory, the counter variable will be having a value 1. Somewhere in the memory, the counter will be, a variable counter will be initialized with a value 1. Then next you will this is the first thing that has happened. The second thing is it will check for your condition. If counter is less than equals to 28, it means condition is true. So you will go inside your loop. It will check the condition, and third thing is it will go inside the loop to run the condition, the statements that are mentioned inside your loop. Okay, system.out.println. It helps you to print output on your screen. So if you see that the counter is mentioned in your output statement, so the first thing that will be visible to the user is 1. So actually this is your output that must be visible to the user for the 10th iterations. For the first iteration, 1 will be displayed. For second iteration, the counter will be incremented to 3. It becomes 4, then 7, then 10, then 13, 16, 20, 19, 22, 25 till 28. Why 28? Because the condition will be true until counter is less than equals to 28. And for the 11th iteration, when you will increment the counter, it is 28 plus 3 now, which is 31. So when counter becomes 31, the condition becomes false and you will have no more iterations. So there will be no 11th iteration. Now let me quickly move towards my Java online compiler to show you that how we can do it practically. Just go to your Google. I have already made a bookmark for my Java compiler. I'll go over here. And here I'm just going to copy the code that I just mentioned for activity 8.6 for a for loop, for, then open the round brackets, initialize your counter by 1. Let's put a value 1 for the first iteration, semicolon. Next, put the condition, counter must be less than equals 28. Because it is the range that is set for the counter for 10 iterations. The next thing is counter must be incremented by 3 after every iteration. So it is counter equals counter plus 3. That's your formula. Now open your curly brackets. Okay. Inside the curly bracket, the only thing you have to mention is your output statement, and you are not printing hello world. You are printing the values of your counter for each iteration. So here we go. This is a simple, that's a simple code for your for loop. Let's quickly run this and see if there is any error or not. Very nice. So this is your expected result. 1, 4, 10, 7, 10, 13, 16, 19, 22, 25, 28. So these are your 10 iterations and the counter value goes from 1 till 28 because every time you are incrementing the counter by 3. Now let me quickly move towards the second type of loop here, that is your condition control loop. So condition control loop that is being used here is a precondition loop, and in precondition loop I am using while loop. So let me just quickly share the syntax of while loop with you for Java. Remember that a while loop solely depends upon the condition. So let's start with the syntax. First you have to write down while. Inside the round brackets, you mention your condition. Remember that the condition must be the counter is less than equals to 28. So the condition will remain same, less than equals to 28. And here your counter is not initialized. You are putting the condition that is using your variable counter, but counter must be initialized by 1. So you have to write down another instruction in the beginning of your while loop, that is int counter equals 1. Okay, now your condition is done. Next, you have to use the curly brackets to tell the start and end of your while loop. Inside that, here you must mention 2 instructions. What are these? First is your output statement, system.out.println, and inside that what you have to print, sorry for this, print line. Inside that mention counter because counter values needs to be printed on a screen. Next, put a semicolon. Next, you have to write down the increment statement that your counter must be incremented by 3 once you are done with your output. because in your while loop, you are not doing it inside while, just as you did in for loop. So you are not doing it here in the round bracket. You must mention the increment statement inside your loop statements. Okay. Now, what will happen? The first thing is in your memory, the counter will be initialized with the value 1. Then you will check for the condition and the condition will remain true till counter is 1. Then 4, then 7, then 10, then 13, 16, 19, 22, 25, 28. For all of these values, the counter will be true. Sorry, the condition will be true because condition says that your counter value must be less than equals to 28. Okay, now inside that, all of your counter values will be printed for the 10th iterations like this, and once you reaches 32, 28 plus 3, that is, sorry, 31, the condition becomes false. So you will have no more iterations. Now, just quickly move towards your Java Online Compiler to see that. Here, let's just do the changes. Let me open it again. It is just an ad. Let's skip this. Okay, look over here. Here we are using while loop. So just initialize your counter value int counter equals 1. Then write down while. Inside while, write down your condition, that is counter must be less than equals 28. And then you have curly brackets. Remember to use curly brackets for the start and end of your loop. System.out.println, your output statement that is going to print the counter values. Write down counter in the round bracket. And next you have to write down the increment statement so that the counter will be incremented by 3 for each iteration. Counter equals counter plus 3. That's it. Now let me quickly run this code and see the result. Oh, there is some error. I didn't put a semicolon here. Remember to put semicolon in every instruction when you are writing in Java. Okay, look at this. Oh, let me run it again. Now, these are proper spacings 1, 4, 7, 10, 13, 16, 19, 22, 25, 28. So this is your actual result. You have 10 iterations and the counter value goes from 1 till 28. This is how we can do it in a condition control loop using my while loop. Thank you so much for watching this video. In the next video, we will be starting the next most important topic of programming, that is totaling and counting. Stay tuned, stay connected, and do not forget to subscribe the channel. Bye bye.